Here we are in Revelation chapter 12. The picture here is a seven-headed dragon. If you're not familiar with the book of Revelation, we have a seven-headed dragon, which obviously represents Satan, and we'll see it actually says that. There's a woman that's standing on the moon. And this woman standing on the moon, she's clothed with the sun. She has a crown of 12 stars upon her head, and she's also with child. So let's see what it says here. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Now the first question we would naturally ask as we're looking at this, oh my goodness, what could this woman represent? We know what the seven-headed dragon represents, but what could this woman possibly represent? On September 23rd, 2017, we were talking about 2020 last week. On September 23rd, 2017, the sign of Revelation 12. Remember, the Revelation 12 was the woman clothed with the sun, moon under her feet, 12 stars on her head, and a red dragon ready to devour her child with a crown of seven stars, or 7 crowns on his head. On September 23rd, 2017, which, by the way, is the Feast of Trumpets. In 2017, the sign of Revelation 12 will appear in the heavens for the only time in the whole history of man. In other words, this has never happened ever before. It will be in the Jewish calendar, the year is 5777. In the Bible, 5 is a number of grace and 7 is the number of perfection. Lindy has that book she's looking at on the spiritual numbers. But the number is repeated 3 times, which implies completion. What number is repeated 3 times? 5. Then you got 777. There's 3 sevens repeated 3 times. Well, what does that mean in biblical numerology? Biblical numeric might well suggest the completion of the dispensation of grace. What are we under right now? The dispensation of grace. The completion of the dispensation of grace means the church is gone. So what this sign is suggesting is in 2017, Feast of Trumpets, the rapture will have taken place. The Feast of Trumpets is also called Rosh Hashanah, and it's called the Jewish New Year. It'll be the 70th anniversary. This date will be the 70th anniversary of the United Nations resolution acknowledging Israel as a state. In other words, 70-year anniversary. The 50th anniversary and Jubilee year for Jerusalem will also happen on this date. 2017 is the 500th anniversary of the Reformation, as well as the 50th anniversary of the Dead Sea Scrolls. 2017 is the 70th Jubilee cycle from the Exodus. Jubilee cycle is what? 50 years. Every 50 years you have a Jubilee cycle. It's the 70th time. There were 50 years that happened since Moses led the tribes out of Egypt. It's the anniversary. Now, here is the sign that's going to appear. The sign happened before, but what's going to happen is not only going to include this, but it's going to go beyond, and it never happened before. In 2 BC, this happened. Jupiter, you see, here's Virgo, right? By the way, anybody, do you remember seeing the whole planisphere? The sun starts at Virgo. Every year, it goes through the 12 signs of the zodiac. Every year, it starts at Virgo, it goes all the way around and ends up at Leo. And then it goes back, Virgo, all the way back to Leo. Well, Virgo is the virgin, right? The virgin has a child, and at the end, he comes back as the Lion of Judah and the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, right? Well, anyway, here's the Virgo, a virgin, and here's Leo, and there's a star called Regulus in Leo, which means king, okay? And here's the planet Jupiter, which is also a planet that represents king. Jupiter connects with Regulus, indicating that there's a coming king right before Jesus is born. See the date here? 2 BC. Okay? right before that happens, Jupiter connects with the star in Leo, which is Regulus, which represents king. So you have the king star and the king planet both connect, but it does something spectacular. It just doesn't connect. If it just connected, so what, right? It's not a big deal. Watch what happens. It connects 3 times. Jupiter came, it connected with the star Regulus, and then it went along its way, and then it turned around. And it came back, and it connected back with the star again, and it circled it, and then it went away, and then it came back again, and it connected with 3 times. That was amazing that happened, but that did happen at the time of Jesus' birth, showing that he who was born, a sign in heaven, that he who was born, the Messiah, was the promised king who would come. Then, as Jupiter leaves, here's Regulus the star, as Jupiter leaves in its natural course, Venus catches up with Jupiter. Venus actually represents the Messiah. Venus comes and it connects with Jupiter, and it gives us what we call the Star of Bethlehem. You all heard about the Star of Bethlehem. Remember this? The wise men said, we saw his star. And so you had the Star of Bethlehem, right? 17th June 2 BC is when that occurred. Then you have, right, remember, the sign of Revelation 12 is what? We have this woman who's a virgin who is going to have a child. The child will be the Messiah. Remember, she's clothed with the sun. The moon's under her feet and 12 stars are on her head. And they're right there waiting for the child is what? The serpent, right? Or the dragon. He's got a crown of 7 stars on his head. Or 7 horns with 7 crowns on his head. You see, this is a serpent right there ready to receive the child when he's born, to try to devour the child. The planet Saturn is there in the constellation at the time Jesus is born, and the Saturn is equivalent to Satan. Also, you see, if you go up to the serpent, you see up there, there's the constellation Corona Borealis, which is a crown of 7 stars. 7 stars of Corona Borealis form the crown on the head of the serpent, which is the very picture we have in Revelation chapter 12. What happens next? Now here, with the eye, this is what you see in the heavens. If you see the constellation Corona Borealis, this is what it looks like. Now the lines aren't drawn there. I have them drawn there, just like you would if you were kind of connect the dots with the Big Dipper. We all know what the Big Dipper is, right? But here's this constellation, and this is how it appears. Okay, and this is that same crown that goes on the serpent's head. Now you'll remember from a previous teaching when we talked about the Christian empire, Byzantine Empire, that was overtaken by the Muslims. Remember, supernaturally, the sign of Islam came over for 4 hours over the city. It was a supernatural event. And we talked about that. It was supposed to be a full moon. Supernaturally, this sign went. But I thought this might be relevant, so I just put it in there. Maybe it's not, but look at this. If you match it up, all I do is turn the sign a little. It looks very similar. And we know the sign was the sign of the enemy that went over in the Christian kingdom, the Byzantine Empire, which was the Eastern Christian kingdom, was destroyed at the time by the Muslims. And the supernatural event happened. And you'd have to go back to a previous video. But look at the sign is very similar. And you see this sign on all the Muslim flags, right? So here we're back to 2 BC, the coming of Jesus' birth. On the Feast of Trumpets, 2 BC, the Venus star, which represents the Messiah, remember it had met Jupiter. Remember we talked about that? Well, now it went on its way. Here's Venus. It entered Virgo. just behind Mercury. What is Mercury? Mercury is the messenger who was sent to Mary before the Messiah would come to the virgin. Was the Gabriel, the angel, the messenger to say, you're going to have the child and he's going to be the Messiah, right? And so the stars actually do that. And remember, the sign of the woman is she's clothed with the sun. You can see her radiating as she has the sun here. And you see how close the moon is? Remember, the moon was under her feet. So the moon is, but remember, we said the sign in all of its splendor has never appeared like we're going to show you in 2017. Here we are on 2017, September 23rd, 2017, which will be the Feast of Trumpets. Here we have Jupiter that moved at this time. Here we have the moon almost directly under her feet. We have the virgin who's going to have the child. The child will be caught up. Here we have an amazing thing happen here. Leo the lion, the constellation consists of 9 stars. So above her head usually is 9 stars. But the Bible says, according to the sign, that she has a crown with 12 stars. Look at these planets line up. 3 planets line up to form, with the constellation, to form a crown on her head of 12 stars. You could actually see it better here. In fact, it's more clear. Those 3 planets are Mercury, Mars, and Venus. You see how there's 9 stars, and then the 10th one's Venus, the 11th, and Mercury is the 12th. It all happens at that time. To fulfill the sign, there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and upon her head 12 stars, she being with child, cry, travailing in birth, pain to be delivered. This is going to happen on the 22nd of September, 2017, Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Trumpets. What is so important about this? Remember, the sign shows 2 things. It's not so much the woman. The woman's the sign, right? Now we see, this never happened before, we see a woman in heaven, fits all the criteria the same way when the Messiah came, but now she's got a crown of 12 stars, right? When we read the Bible, what does it say? The woman's child was caught up to heaven. That's the rapture. Right? And the second thing that happens is the dragon was cast down from heaven. And this is all going to happen the 22nd of September, 2017. Now, we talked about the sign we looked at last week, talked about the rapture. We kind of brought it to around 2020. Right? And if you remember the way I arrived at that, remember we went to the sign and we looked at it, and I expected to see at a certain date, and I said, well, wait a minute, it wouldn't really show at the end, so we backed up 3.5 years to get to the middle of the tribulation, and then we found the sign, remember? And then we said, okay, based upon that, if we go back 3.5 years, we would find the rapture. Well, guess what? If it is 2017, that other sign still goes into effect, except for the date that we saw actually is 2020. And if you back up 3 years for the rapture, you arrive back to 2017. So the rapture, based upon the rapture, could happen as early as not this year, but next year. Of course, we always say this. We don't know exactly the day, right? You can't know exactly the day. But remember the stars were in there when Jesus was born. There's prophecy that told Israel, if they would have understood it told Israel the exact year Jesus would be crucified. The exact year. We knew, according to prophecy, he would be crucified on Passover because he was the Passover lamb. So we were told by the prophecy exactly when it would happen. The wise men are called wise for a reason. They saw his star. Many people didn't see the star, but they were looking and they saw his star. They knew it was time for him to be born. Is it possible that this sign, which has never happened before, with the 12 stars on her head, never happened before, with all this in connection, with the moon under her feet, and that she's got the sun on her, she's clothed with the sun, her moon's under her feet, 12 stars over her head. The sign says two things. The child goes up to heaven, and the enemy, the dragon, is cast down to the earth. Then he has 42 months. You better go home, and you better pack your bags. If you're going to bring anything to heaven with you, get a suitcase and put whatever you're going to get in there. And I'm being kind of facetious, but that's how real. And I said this before at one time. I said it wouldn't be a bad idea just to pack a bag and have it there where you can look at it every day to remind you, my bags are packed and I'm ready to go. Because we could be leaving as soon as, not 2016, but 2017. Now, it could be 2016. It could be tomorrow. But according to the signs in the heavens, it looks like right around the Feast of Trumpets 2017. Feast of Trumpets is Rosh Hashanah, and that's actually the day when the Day of Atonement comes. We've spoken about all that stuff. We have the actual date here that this is supposed to happen. You can see the date down here. This is done with there's software. You can download this software for free. You can look up this stuff all on your own computer if you want. So you can see the moon under her feet. You see the sun there. You can see the 12 stars in Leo above her head. So some say the coming of the tribulation has already begun.